Welcome to Bees and Reverie Radio, the podcast where we talk about pollinator gardens, native plants, bees, butterflies, and other topics related to biodiversity, including what we can do in our own backyards. And we will sometimes report on current environmental news and anything biodiversity related that we should all be aware of and do together to protect bees, butterflies, and habitat here in the United States. I'm Emily Wayland. LaDonna is off this week, but today we are joined by Kate of Bugs Native Plants, and today is our Spring Equinox episode. So, to celebrate the occasion, we are naturally going to talk about spring ephemerals, springtime garden planning, and more. So, welcome to the show, Kate. Can you tell us about yourself, your background, and how you got into native plants?
Yeah, definitely. So I've always been a bit of a nature lover. So when I was younger, I remember always spending a lot of time outside. The neighbor next to us has woods and a prairie, so I would always be there exploring, looking for bugs and for rocks. But I didn't get into plants specifically until about 3 years ago. I started working at a local native plant nursery, Agricole.
Oh,
Um,
yeah,
I didn't really apply there looking to work with native plants. I just kind of wanted to be around plants in general. So it was kind of a happy accident that I turned out to really like the native plants that they were growing.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a good surprise. It sent me down a good path. But after graduating high school, I was a golfer in high school and I wanted to play in college, so that was kind of my focus at the time. And I ended up going to UW-Eau Claire. They had a really good team, and I wanted to be a part of that team. So what I was going to school for kind of took a backseat to that. Um, I actually started out with geology, but the two travel, golf and geology, you travel. And so I just prioritized golf and ended up just switching to like business management to kind of, you know, get some sort of degree
Sure.
thinking, I don't know, maybe I'd do something in golf. Um, so yeah, after I graduated there, I returned home and worked at the country club that I had been working at since I was in high school. Worked there for maybe 3 years after graduating and was like the admin assistant, marketing specialist person. But then just kind of felt like I wanted to change. Like I like golf, but I don't, I didn't really see myself
Sure.
doing it long term. Um, so then I was just like looking for universities around, and I live 40 minutes from UW Whitewater, and I saw that they had a geology program. So I was like, well, maybe I should go and, give that another try because I do love rocks. And we have a field behind our house where I'm able to find some fossils and also agatized rocks as
Mm.
well.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, maybe just follow passions and see what happens. Um,
Right.
So I think I got one semester in of normal schooling, and then COVID started. So that kind of threw a wrench into plans because I was really looking forward to doing like field studies and getting to travel to all these places and find cool rocks that we have in the United States, but didn't turn out.
But that
Yeah,
sounds really cool.
yeah, definitely. We got one good trip into Texas and we got to find a lot of cool stuff, so it was fun. But after graduating with from Whitewater with geology, I took just a regular job in the field and then still was kind of feeling like, I don't know, I need to do something else. And then I landed at the nursery, and that was mostly just because I was like, well, I don't like winter. I need to find something where I get a glimpse of summer all year round. And I'm like, well, greenhouses, they should be pretty nice in the winter. So that's kind of what led me to that. And then while I was working there, they also let us take home plants that were, on death's doorstep pretty much, or ones they weren't able to
Oh,
sell.
that's cool.
So I was able to
Just
do,
free plants.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm not saying no. I got to do a lot of projects around the house here, and that kind of sparked the passion for doing like landscaping design work because just you get to be creative, and that's something that I had missed because I got to do that a bit with like graphic design marketing. So it's
Right.
melding everything together, like the passionate stuff with the creativity. So now here I am. Oh, and I did also work at the forest preserves in Winnebago County. So that really helped with like bridging the gap between seeing the plants in the greenhouse, just,
Mm.
in there,
Hmm.
versus seeing them like where they actually do naturally occur, like in the different ecosystems they belong to.
Right. It's kind of like a full circle moment.
Yeah, and seeing, what you find next to each other and the, the like the in-between zones going from like a wetland to a prairie, like what you would find at all these different ecotypes. So, and even just like learning about management processes and what they do to keep the preserves in the condition that they are in. So, yeah, it was really a good full circle kind of thing. I dipped my toes into a couple
Yeah.
of things. So yeah, so now I'm with the starting my own design thing. So I just kind of was posting pictures of what I did around the house, and someone wanted me to work on a garden for them, and now, you know, I'm trying to make a full-time thing of it. So,
That's really great. So with that in mind, you're a member of Wild Ones. Can
yep.
you tell us a bit about the organization, what they do, how you became involved with them, all that good stuff, and what your role is with your chapter?
Yeah, definitely. So Wild Ones is a nonprofit that actually started in Wisconsin, and it promotes natural landscapes through educating, advocating, and encouraging collaboration throughout the different chapters to improve biodiversity and make our lawns more environmentally friendly. I know Wisconsin, I don't know the total number of chapters in Wisconsin, but it's spread throughout the Midwest. So it's becoming, a good little established organization for people to rely on for information to help
Oh,
improve.
yeah. And I had no idea until you said that it started in Wisconsin.
Hmm.
My dad is on the board of the Menominee River chapter.
Yeah, I became involved in the Madison chapter in the fall of 2023. So that's when I was working at Winnebago County and just kind of looking for a way to get more involved with local organizations.
Hmm.
And my uncle is also a member, although he's a member of the Rock River Valley chapter. So I'm in
Oh,
both,
okay.
kind of have a weird gap.
Sure, I understand that.
And they were also looking specifically for social media help. And that's what I had done
Mm,
at the country club. So I was like, well, that'll be an easy thing to pop back into, something I'm familiar with.
yeah.
So yeah, so I've been volunteering with them since that fall, and now I'm on the board because the other marketing board member ended up leaving. So I'm their marketing
Oh,
person. So yeah. So yeah, so I help out with we just got done with our like event planning sessions throughout the winter. So now we're enrolling or rolling out our spring events, lots of like wildflower walks, and especially for spring ephemerals. There's a lot of really good events coming up in the next month for if you're in the Madison area.
that's really cool. I've been thinking about joining. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but maybe this is my little kick in the pants to do that.
If you're not a member, you can still, show up to events. There is member specific events, but in general, it's not an exclusionary
Oh,
organization. It's everyone's welcome. And if you want to become a member, that's even better.
well, that's good to know. So I'm
Yeah.
sure, like Donna and I, although she's not here this week, you're excited that it's finally springtime. And spring's a very important time for our pollinators, as we all know, because spring ephemerals are the first early food source for pollinators after winter, as many flowering plants have not yet bloomed. And just for our listeners, if you're not familiar with that term, an ephemeral plant is a plant with a very short life cycle or very short period of active growth, often one that grows only during brief periods when conditions are favorable. Several types of ephemeral plants exist. The first, spring ephemeral, refers to plants that emerge quickly in the spring and die back to their underground parts after short growth and reproduction phase. And we've mentioned in other episodes that it is important that native plant habitats provide blooms for all seasons so that there is food available to our pollinators wherever they need it. Native pollinator garden habitats are more effective when you have flowers blooming in every season, just kind of depending on where you live, because obviously some places have winter, some places don't have as much of a winter. So it really depends on where you live and what's growing there. Now, I personally don't have as many spring blooming flowers or ephemerals as I should, especially because my backyard prairie is full sun. I think my favorite personally has to be like trilliums. I really like looking for morels in the spring. So I always look for the trilliums as one of those like folkloric signs that you can find those mushrooms. I also think Jack and the Pulpits are fun personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I don't know, I have a bit of affinity to the spring beauty. I really like the pink pollen. I think that's really cool. And I just like how they form little patches, so it's just like kind of a sweet little woodland scene. And I do love bloodroot too, just the how unique the leaves are and just kind of pops up and it's just one day of blooming. I think that one is only 1 day or 2 days.
That's really quick.
Hmm.
So now as you mentioned, you have some experience doing landscape design with native plants. Do you have any recommendations for spring blooming plants that would work in most gardens? Since a lot of spring ephemerals prefer a wooded habitat.
Yeah, definitely. So some good options for sunnier spots. The two golden Alexanders, the divided leaf and then the heart leaf, both can
Mhm.
have full sun. One, the divided leaf is a little more tolerant for moist soil, and then the heart leaf prefers a little more drier soil. So depending on your conditions, either of those would be a good option. Another one that I've just added last fall that I'm really looking forward to blooming is the prairie phlox. It has a really pretty pink bloom,
Mm.
prefers full sun versus like the woodland phlox that blooms around the same time, but again is a woodland one. And even some where they're classified as woodlands, like the columbine and the Jacob's ladder, always considered more woodland ones, they can tolerate a bit more sun. I have my columbine probably somewhere between part and full sun, and
Okay.
that's the one that's like almost or over 4 feet tall. So
I guess I never really thought about columbine being tolerant of any of that.
yeah, well, they classify it as a woods edge species, so it can,
Oh.
depending on if it's happy with the soil, I suppose, and depending on your definition of spring, when you want the cutoff to be. Wild lupin is another great one, and that blooms in
Mm-hmm.
May and has a long bloom too. And then even orange butterfly weed, they start to bloom towards the end of May, and then in June and July they get going. Milkweeds have a pretty long bloom too.
Oh, yeah. So now, do you find that springtime natives are any harder or easier to grow than on any other popular quote staple natives like bee balm, echinacea, black-eyed Susan, etc.?
So I wouldn't say that springtime blooms are more difficult. I would say ephemerals are more difficult. um, because they're the earliest spring ones and they're just they just pop up and it's really difficult to collect seeds and a lot of them also have relationship with the soil and other plants they're growing next to. So that's a bit difficult to replicate in like a nursery setting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a lot of those you won't be able to purchase like the actual plant or just the seeds. Like they sell them as bare roots because that's like what they found is the most efficient way to get them growing. But springtime blooms, I don't think are too difficult. The only difficult thing is once you do grow them, it's like they bloom. They may have like a weird bloom time that first year because it really depends on
Oh,
the age you start the seeds at. Like they may miss their original bloom time. But then the next year, if as long as you plant them that year, the next year they'll get more acclimated to their seasonal cycle. Um,
that makes sense. I guess I never really thought about that adjustment.
mhm. Yeah, it's definitely because I've noticed that while working in the greenhouse too, there'd be like spring plants blooming in the fall, and I'm like, well, I suppose like that's the life cycle of the plant, like becoming a seedling and then it's maturing, but also
Right.
bloom. But I've noticed once you do plant them, then next year, they become attuned to their natural blooming cycle.
So, just curious. So, like you were saying, some of these spring plants were blooming in the greenhouse. Would you then collect the seeds from them if they flowered, or how did that work?
They never collected seeds. I mean, I did because they
Oh,
were
yeah.
wild. I remember collecting wild petunias because they were popping all over the place, and I know that's like an endangered one. So I'm like, well, I'm not just gonna let them fall on the ground, you know.
Right, right.
But for other ones, they don't ever really let them go to seed. They will cut them even sometimes when they are in bloom, just because
Hmm.
it's easier to maintain versus like, you know, well, they're easier to maintain when they're cut short versus like it becoming a mature plant.
Right.
Um, yeah, I don't know. They don't. They must have enough of them growing out in their fields that they don't really have to worry about that. Or,
Okay.
or if they don't, maybe I mean, because there are some species that they'll have growing that aren't very common. So I'd think maybe for those they would, um, you know, try to get some seeds out of it. But I don't know. I never thought to ask. That's good. That's a good question.
I would be collecting those seeds if I worked there too. Any cutting, any seed.
Oh,
Totally, totally
yeah.
there. So we've talked a lot about planning a pollinator garden this first season, and we've shared some tips. We've talked about how even if you can devote 10% of your land to native plants, that it makes a difference. And we've talked about how it is recommended that when you're choosing what to plant, that a good goal is to plant 70% native plants to 30% non-native, non-invasive plant in all of our garden spaces. Now, I know LaDonna and I both have some plants in our gardens that aren't native because we like them and they don't do any harm or they're already here in the landscaping at our house. And if they aren't invasive, they might not be worth to take the trouble to take out. And in some cases, they do support pollinators. I personally have peonies because I like them and I kind of want to do a cottage garden out front. And I just have like a bleeding heart plant. But I do love seeing all the tulips, hyacinths, and crocuses this time of year. And since LaDonna couldn't make it this week, she did want me to mention the strong presence of daffodils where she lives in the Washington, D.C. area. And she talks about how they were planted all around the Capitol and at the National Gardens, and the daffodils are just everywhere in the spring. And she likes how like yellow and cheerful they are, but as she has learned more about native plants, she finds herself being less drawn to them and less to plants that are just purely ornamental. And I have to agree with her there.
No, I agree as well. They've definitely, you know, non-native plants have definitely lost their allure to me. Now that I'm aware of all the amazing native spring ephemerals and the spring plants that we have that we don't really see as much around. But I do appreciate the gap that these plants fill for bees because that's the other thing.
Mm,
Like, if you were to remove all non-native plants, there would be a huge gap because we don't have native plants as abundant as they used to be. So a lot of pollinators would suffer just because they get so much from those non-native. So it's kind of like, you know, it's not an all or nothing kind of thing. You kind of have to gradually get yourself into a better ratio, I guess, if you want for your yard.
right.
Although I do have a controversial favorite springtime non-native, which actually is invasive. And it's the lily of the valley. Um,
Yes.
yeah, but it's more about, you know, the look of it and also sentimental reasons. Like I remember at my grandma's house, there would always be the lily of the valley, and it's a favorite flower in our family. And also, I was born in May, and that's May's birth flower, so there's a lot of connections there.
Hmm.
But as for ones that I don't like, I mean, I don't really hold too much against non-native plants because I mean, I understand. The ones I don't like mostly are the invasive ones. Especially I just really can't stand the ditch daylilies.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, yeah.
and not that they even bloom in spring, but just spring is when you start to see them pop up and you can see like the neon green as you're driving around, and it's just crazy how how they'll fill in a spot.
So like and they just take over. Like we have some at our house that I've been trying to pull out for years and I think I have it all and I don't. And all of a sudden there's the ugly grass foliage it has.
Hmm.
Um
I was gonna say I did the same at my parents' house, and even if you just leave like one small tuber, or like I feel like they can regrow even from like a cut
oh
tuber.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
so I didn't throw them out right away because I was like, well, they'll break down, they'll be exposed. No, they that one winter where we had like negative 10 plus degrees, they sat exposed and then they bloomed the next
Did
year.
they
And
really?
yeah, so then I finally tossed them. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
want to start a patch back here. I was hoping you guys would die off with the extreme weather. I guess not.
That's invasive for you. And I have to say, Lily of the Valley is my absolute favorite too. I don't know if it's like there's always a connection with grandma's, but my grandma had it growing all up a hill at her old house. She used to have a house in the woods. And it's like it has a particular fondness for me too. And I've thought about growing it. And I was like, oh, should I put it in a giant whiskey barrel? Because then
Mhm.
at least it'll be contained. But the more I think and about it and learn, I'm just like, that's not worth it. I'll
Yeah.
just buy it at the farmer's market or something. So,
Mhm. Oh, I was gonna say that's another thing with like those springtime blooms is it's really interesting because you'll be able to see like if you're driving around and you see like a random patch of daffodils, you can be like, okay, well there used to be a house there because that was just such a common.
oh,
I
yeah.
feel like that was like one of the first things you buy a house and then you plant daffodils.
I didn't even think about that.
I don't see it too often, but I do randomly you'll see like a wooded lot and then you'll see some daffodils. I'm like, yeah, I bet there was once a house there.
I mean, I get why they brought them over. They're awful pretty, but man, they get everywhere. So obviously, invasives are a pain. We have to pull them. And that's part of springtime garden prep. So I personally don't clean up in the winter ever at all because I don't want to disturb any wildlife that might be nesting or using leftover seeds and seed heads and stems. So what about your garden prep, Kate? Do you have any overall advice for people planting native this spring?
I'm much of the same way for cleanup. I don't really do too much until like you mentioned those temps, and I've also heard it's not really the daytime temps you have to look out for. It's the overnight temp. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, because so people say once the overnight temps have been in the 50s for a week or two, so about mid-May, that's kind of when you have the go ahead because insects will still want to be in there at nighttime. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of get rid of the larger stalks because some of the plants, that get pretty tall and their stalks are like proper, they need like a couple seasons to break down. So I definitely remove those because that's kind of another thing that I struggle with. It's like we want our yards to mimic nature, but a lot of people have problem with how quote messy nature is.
Yes.
And I'm mostly thinking about my garden that faces our front yard. So people driving by, to kind of like have people see that like it doesn't have to be what they consider a mess, so
Right.
like, kind of be a little more taken care of out there and then have it wild in the back. So yeah, and then I guess another thing is depending on the leaves. We get all of our leaves from our neighbor's oak across the road. So and sometimes with the wind they end up piling like a foot, and if I have
Hmm.
plant trying to pop up, it can be a little tricky, and I don't want to, accidentally kill anything just because I am trying to keep it as is. So I'll move some leaves around, but I mean that's kind of about it. I don't really go too crazy with cleaning up. I just, think of what would happen in nature.
Right. And I'm the same way. I haven't done too much in our front yard yet. We live in a house in a town not far from you, actually. When we bought this house, it was clear that nobody, whoever owned it, took care of it. So it's
Yeah.
been a lot of pulling bindweed and trying to establish new spaces because we didn't have anything to work with. So I'm much of the mind of you where I'm trying to keep like the front of the house is going to be nicer looking overall. Like that's going to be all native, but more cottage garden style. And then the back, it's wild, which I think that's kind of a good way to go about it. But I think part of it is obviously showing people that it's okay to leave things more natural. Like we don't need to be perfect cleaning everything up. It's not the way it's supposed to be, as you mentioned. So, aside from gardening, I know personally I'm excited to get out hiking and visit some of my favorite natural areas nearby. Like, I've got a prairie near my house that I always go and kind of see how things are going over there so I can kind of gauge my garden against it. And I like to see what plants are coming up. I personally really want to find a skunk cabbage this spring. I've never seen one in the wild. Now, I know you've gone out to observe and document native plants on your Instagram. Is there a plant or two that really stood out to you as your favorite finds?
Well, most of my favorite finds happen to be spring ephemerals. And I guess in general, just kind of like rare plants that you wouldn't see kind of a
Hmm.
more because I feel like it's just more of like a not really hide and seek, but you know. It's more,
Yeah.
there's more involved in trying to find them. So yeah, I definitely like the spring ephemerals. Also because again, like they're hard to find because they're only still existing in intact woods. Then
Hmm.
also the widespread or the display of them depends on the management of that woods as well. So woods that are really taken care of, they'll have a really impressive spring ephemeral display. Like where I'd like to go for the spring ephemerals, there's a preserve called Kilbuck Bluffs. It's south of Rockford. I know it's
Oh,
friggin'
okay.
I haven't really seen anything quite like that. And not this past fall, the fall before is where we burned. And we burned
Mm,
the woods, but certain sections, and you can definitely see a difference, like a significant difference in the area we burned versus not. Like there's still stuff coming up in the area where we didn't, but it doesn't
right.
sound like the burned area does. But as for favorites, I mean, like I mentioned the spring beauties and the bloodroot, but
Ah, yes.
yeah, those are some good ones. And then this year I have some trout lilies and trilliums on my list for going to find. Um, so yeah, I think some of the best places are local preserves and parks because, that's where you'll likely find intact woods that you can go to. But there's probably some people who have really beautiful woods that they take good care of. But what I like to do is go on iNaturalist and just type in the species name and see like locally around me where people have observed it. And
Oh,
but it's also nice because you can see like how recent people are finding it and also a rough bloom time. Like if they take a picture and it's in bloom, you'll be able to see the date of it.
oh, and then you can compare that and try to look around that time.
And there's also like I know a couple people who are biologists or even like amateur ecologists, and so
Hmm.
I'll they're up to. The number one important thing is, especially when you're looking for rare plants, is that you're not picking them because then you're basically just canceling out any opportunity for it to spread. Um,
Right.
and then also no digging because that can also, well, it's illegal in preserves and parks, but that can get you into some serious trouble.
Leave no trace. So, do we've talked about spring ephemerals. Do you have an overall favorite, you know, couple native plants?
Yeah, although my favorite one still is a spring bloom, but it's the wood violet. They're just
Wisconsin
really,
state flower.
yeah, there you go. They're just, I don't know, sweet and dainty, and they have all the different variations. Like there's some that are like a bluish purple, and then there's some that's like kind of more violet. But I just remember they're always seeing them filled throughout the woods at my grandma's house, and then even at our house here, there's just, a really nice patch of it, and it's just kind of a sweet looking flower. And they make
Yeah.
a great ground cover too in the garden that's along our front side yard. It's just, I guess it's, well, people talk about green mulching. You can use violets. The only bad thing though is they're not drought tolerant. So
Yeah.
in August and September and they just flopping around. So, but besides those ones, I do really like the two echinaceas, the coneflowers, Joe Pye, both the wetland one and the woodland. I don't know. It's just a really interesting bloom.
They are.
Especially the woodland one. I don't know. I just kind of, it's also it's such a big plant too. Like
Right. So you
the
can
bloom
get some
itself,
height in there.
yeah, the bloom itself, it's like a foot, a foot wide almost.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one, which I haven't seen in person, I've seen a lot of pictures of, is Queen of the Prairie, which it just seems like, I don't know, like pink cotton candy almost. So I have a couple that I've planted, not this past fall, the fall before, that haven't bloomed yet. So I'm hoping I'll get a bloom out of them, although I'm not quite sure that my yard has the conditions that it needs. Fingers crossed on that one because that would just be really cool to just even see for one season.
Oh yeah, that sounds great. Queen of the Prairie is so pretty.
Mhm.
Fun fact, one year I tried to, so I have no trees in my backyard at all. Like we have maybe two trees in our lot and in our front, they're very small. I thought it would be a good idea to try to plant Jack in the pulpit in my prairie. It never came back.
No,
No, it just gets too dry back there. But I was so excited. It's like, because it's just one of my favorites and it's such a whimsical flower, I thought I'd give it a try, but no.
that's well,
Before,
Another fun thing about native plants is you get to experiment because I mean, there's some plants that I have growing that are existing in my yard where I wouldn't think that they would even, be happy at all, but yet,
But yet they do, yeah.
yeah, they're still going strong. So it's kind of fun thing, if you have enough to spare and you want to experiment in different spots, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I personally am going to really focus on like grasses and just kind of supplementing my backyard prairie a little better. Like, as much as I want to go crazy ordering more seeds and plants, I'll just kind of play it by ear and see if I can, give the prairie a bit more variety before expanding too much or adding too much more.
Hmm.
But what about your 2025 garden plans?
Yes, I've got quite a lot of plans. I'm unsure if I'll get to them. Like every year, it's the same thing. I have so many things I want to do, but what I actually end up doing, you
Hmm.
know, comparison. Um,
Totally get that.
but the first thing on my list is to get my winter sowing pots going. I'm a bit late, but also I keep my seeds out in the garage. So they have been exposed to the cold this whole winter, so that takes care of the stratified part of it. I just need to get them into some soil so then they can get ready to germinate whenever they
Mm-hmm.
do. Another thing is working on the meadow in our backyard and then also the planting I have out at the front yard. I do this thing where I need to like document every plant I add because
That's awesome.
I'm curious as to what will do well in my yard. And then if something doesn't pop up, I'm like, well, what was that? Why didn't it pop up? So
Right.
I have a lot of documenting going on with like these golf tees to like mark where the plant is.
Oh, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and it's also nice because like I'm a golfer. I'm like, well, I got plenty of golf tees. And if you ordered like the neon painted ones, they stick out really well too.
So you can
So
see them.
yeah, first like contrast against the green. So that's been working pretty well for me. So I'll do a golf tee, I'll do a tag with like the name of the plant. Sometimes I even do flags. I have tons of like those little like utility flags in our yard. It's probably driving my parents insane, but I don't know. I'll take them once, things are established and I'm certain they'll be back. But to start out,
Right.
I want to make sure I know where everything is. Um, but yeah, then I'm also like doing hand-drawn maps that I'm trying to put like into Procreate as well, so I can compare every year like where things are. Um, but besides that, also I'm another task that I find myself doing is relocating plants a lot. Um,
Hmm.
and it's mostly because I at the in the fall I'm just like I just need to put this somewhere, Onto the spring, I'm like, okay, well, why did I do that? What was what was I thinking back then? So, I just have a list of like things I need to move and where I think it should go. So, and then well, there's always lots of weeding to be done and
Oh my gosh, yeah.
especially with like, well, I was going to mention motherwort, which technically isn't invasive, but it's just everywhere here.
It's
And,
aggressive.
yeah. And also the seeds are just like pokey balls and I like to walk around barefooted a lot, so I just kind of plants like that I try to keep to one spot so I know where they are
Mm-hmm.
whenever I have to. Because we have like stinging nettle as well. My dad loves stinging nettle, but I'm like, okay, that's good, but let's just keep it to this one spot so I always know where it will be, you know?
So you don't have to walk into it and have it sting you. Yeah.
Yep. Um, and actually my dad bought from our neighbor an acre and a quarter. So now, well, I had been unofficially working in that area and adding plants to it. We actually found last year there's another native orchid that's naturally occurring in the back part of it. Because
Mhm.
before, I think last year, the year before, we found downy rattlesnake plantain.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. And there's I've been finding a couple more spots too. Like I thought originally it was just two and then it doubled and now I think we're like at 8 different spots we're finding it. And now there's another orchid I've been finding and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. So that's been a very interesting discovery considering that used to be farmland. So
Right.
there's quite a few plants that are popping up there that I'm like, I don't know how you guys have survived this land being tilled and farmed, but
Especially orchids.
mhm. Yeah, I don't know if maybe that spot was spared because it is kind of closer and maybe they had a house
Oh,
near there.
maybe.
Either way, I'm not complaining, but but the front part of the area is just kind of degraded and there's a lot of little trees and they're falling over, so that'll be nice to clear that up and add some more native plants and or plants, trees, shrubs into that area. So yeah, there's always a list of things going on that it's like I really have like 5 years worth of work packed into like a season.
It never ends. You're
Yeah.
definitely way more organized than I am.
Thank you. I'm glad it seems that way. I had my aunts come over last fall for like a planting party because I was putting off my planting for so long. I said,
Hmm.
I just need hands, you know.
That's a good idea.
So just put them wherever, and if I don't like it in the spring, I'll just move them. I just need them to be in the ground. Otherwise, I don't know if they're going to make it through the winter.
Right.
As I was
That's a
putting,
really good idea.
yeah, I mean, why not, you know? But when I was putting together like the map of where I thought things should go and like what species I had, I was like, wow, this is like, if someone didn't know plants, they would think like this is just like the work of a lunatic. You know, there's just tons of stuff to put together. It gets a bit overwhelming and it's tricky to like kind of pare down what I know to someone who doesn't really know much about plants.
For
And I'm
sure.
not even any sort of specialist either, so I can't imagine how a botanist would feel.
Right. Do you want to talk about your five garden designs?
Oh, sure. You mean like the ones I have coming up?
Yeah. Sorry if I caught you off guard there.
Oh no, you're
I'm
okay.
just curious about them.
So yeah, so this spring I've got 5 projects so far. One is kind of a redo of an original project I did that I planted way too sparse because I was like, oh well, they'll fill in, but I'm like, okay, well, that's like 5 years, on. So, I've changed my thinking since then. But anyways, I'm revisiting that one because it was just way too sparse. And it's underneath an oak, and I included some plants that I'm like, that one wouldn't make sense. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one because now I can do some better work on it. Another project is for my boss or my old boss. He bought a new home and he wants me to do some areas at his house, so that'll be fun. So and then another project is for my uncle who lives at the house my grandfather built, so his childhood home. And there's this side of the house that is kind of being overrun with plants from the woods, specifically poison ivy. um, they live over by the Sugar River area, which is a really cool area. Like
It is.
they have a really nice oak woodland, and you can see the sandy soil. And not that the soil near the house will be as sandy, but still it'll be nice, a little sentimental thing. So I get to help out. And then the other two are one is from a friend I had in high school. She's not happy with the landscaping they have at their house. Or not that they just had it done or anything, but it's just kind of, whatever. And then another one reached out to me from my Facebook page, and she's from Beloit, so she wants to do like a little side strip of her yard. So yeah, so that's what I've got going so far. Although I do have some unofficial projects. I suppose the one at my uncle's is an unofficial one because I'm not really going to charge him.
Right. You're just kind of playing around there or whatever. But that's still fun.
Yeah, yeah, and I like helping out family.
Yeah.
Why not? And a lot of my family are getting into native plants. My uncle, who I'm helping, he was into native plants way before I am, and he was a member or he is still a member of Wild Ones. And so yeah, so now he's got another buddy who's who's interested in native plants.
That's awesome. Now, it's funny how this episode kind of turned into like a very like zoomed in view of a certain area in Wisconsin, specifically Rock County, because we are both in Rock County, Wisconsin. So,
Mm.
for anybody else who might be listening that's in the area or nearby, do you have any favorite local nurseries or garden centers that sell native plants?
Yeah, definitely. So, I do most of my ordering from Agricol just because well, this is for like projects. Um,
Hmm.
do need a larger quantity. And also, from working at Agricol, I kind of have a better idea of the plants that they have to offer. And also it's nice because they have a pickup option. So that kind of, I don't know, I just kind of like to go pick them up and I can just make a little adventure out of it. Um,
Right.
Another local company is Bombas. The owner, Corrine, she used to work at Taylor Creek, another local one in Broadhead. Although I think Taylor Creek now is only doing wholesale. So Agricol does wholesale and retail.
Oh, they
And
do. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, Korean, she opened Bombas, I think, last year or the year before. But besides that one, oh, I guess it's not in all the time offering, but Wild Ones, especially the Rock River Valley, they have like a spring sale and I think a fall sale. That one I'm a little iffy on. I know for sure spring sale because I volunteered for it.
Oh,
Um,
okay. And a lot of places I find do spring over fall if they're only going to do one.
mhm. Yeah, or they do like fall, they'll just do like trees or shrubs. If I don't know for sure if the Wild Ones is a fall one, but I know that dang, what is it called? Country Road Greenhouses. They're in Rochelle, Illinois. They have a spring and a fall one, and they have a really good selection of forbs, so like plants.
Oh,
Well,
nice.
well, do you think people know what I mean when I say forbs?
Why don't you just mention what those are quick, just so in case they don't?
I just know it's like non-woody. So, Country Road Greenhouse, they're in Rochelle, Illinois, so it's about and takes me about an hour to get there. They have a spring and a fall sale, and they have a really good selection of forbs, which is just like the plants that you think of when you think of native plants, like non-woody, broadleaf flowering plants.
Oh,
But they
okay.
but they also have a really good selection of trees and shrubs. Like we got three hazelnuts from them. We got three sycamores from them last year. Also, serviceberry, and they're pretty decently sized as well. So they're not like saplings. They're kind of
Oh,
where it's still, I'm not sure what size of a pot it is, but still like manageable where you can carry it yourself.
right, right.
So yeah, so I definitely suggest them for anyone who wants to do like a little road trip. They have a really good selection.
So before we close out, this is just kind of a fun question. Do you have a favorite pollinator?
Yeah. So my favorite pollinator that's a butterfly would be the red spotted purple, which is the same butterfly that's in my logo.
Ah, yeah.
Um, and mostly just because I like the colors and they just have really cool markings. And also we see them quite a bit at our house, and they just kind of, I don't know, inconspicuous. Well, I feel like most butterflies are kind of just, like they're there and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a big butterfly person when I was younger, but it was mostly because I wanted to catch them.
I was the same way.
Which my neighbor who owns the woods and the prairie that we would go to, he's a big native plant guy as well. And he says that he's happy that I've done a 180 where it's like I want the butterflies to exist to just look at them.
Sure, yeah.
He'd always tell me, he's like, if you catch them, they're not going to come around. So yeah, I've learned from my ways. But pollinator that's not a butterfly, I do really like the rusty patch bumblebee. And
Ah, yes.
kind of going with like the plant thing, like it's an elusive, you know, not really seen much around. Yeah, I'm hoping I'm hoping I see some this summer. There's been quite a few sightings in Beloit last summer.
Oh, there
Uh,
was.
mhm. Yeah, and one
Huh.
was at the Merrill Community Garden in Beloit, which is like the middle of Beloit, and there isn't really much other green space besides,
That surprises me.
mhm. So I don't know. I would like I think I'm just gonna stick with like being somewhat delusional and being like, yeah, there's definitely one here. I just didn't see it. So next summer or this upcoming summer, I'm gonna be like, I'm going to see the one that I know is here. Like I need to like actually observe it.
Do you remember, was it 2 years ago, that whole Bell Bowl Prairie fiasco in
Hmm.
Rockford?
Yeah.
Wasn't that a proven habitat of the rusty patch bumblebee? I thought somebody found one there.
Oh, um, I wouldn't be surprised though, because I think they do prefer prairie versus like, wetlands or,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And it doesn't really surprise me that that wasn't really a factor to get them to stop.
For those of you who are listening who might not know what we're talking about, just for context, a couple of years ago in Rockford, Illinois, near the Rockford Chicago airport, there was a prairie, which is one of the oldest remnant prairies in, I believe, the Midwest, if not the country, next to this airport. And for a couple of years, they tried to build an access road for the e-commerce part of the cargo area of the airport. So where Amazon would fly into. So even though there was already a road there, not that far away, they wanted to create a shortcut and unfortunately destroyed a lot of that prairie to build a road. I do know that a lot of the plant species that were there were able to get rescued by locals who care about native plants, but other than that, much of the prairie was destroyed. So, just so you know what we're talking about, that's what we're talking about. And the rusty patch bumblebee may or may not have been there at the time. So, it just kind of goes to show that when you are enforcing the Endangered Species Act, it's not that easy. And it's really up to state and local jurisdictions to do that.
And actually, I was working at the forest preserves in Winnebago County that same season, and
Oh,
they were a part of the group, or not like everyone, but there was a couple people who worked there who also volunteered to save some of the plants that were there, and we ended up planting some of them at Cedar Cliff Preserve. I'm
well,
not,
that's great.
yeah, I'm not sure if there was another area. But yeah, they had like a bunch of pots from the Belleville Prairie, and then they would divvy them up, and we planted some at Cedar Cliff. So yeah, I'm hoping, they've become established and they'll continue to thrive. But yeah, it's definitely disappointing
It was
that.
very disappointing, but at least native plants are resilient and there's a good chance they've established themselves.
Hmm.
Well, I'm glad to hear that those plants have found a new home. And thank you for joining us today, Kate. Where can people find you and follow you online?
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about native plants, and I really hope that this podcast continues to be a success for you guys and you get even more people interested in native plants.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, definitely. As for online, I just have social medias right now. So Facebook and Instagram right now. And it's just Bugs Native Plants. You'll be able to find me. You can look for the red spotted purple butterfly logo. And then I also do have a TikTok that I've been getting, some decent traction on when I would post like my plant spotlights. That's
Hmm.
another thing on my list I got to do. So yeah, so you can find me those three spots.
So we will put Kate's links down in the show notes. You can follow Bugs Native Plants wherever she is. And thanks for everybody else for tuning into Bees and Reverie Radio. We are releasing full episodes every Thursday, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. This is season 1. We also release additional short episodes as bonuses as current issues come up. You can also follow us on social media. Our handle is at Bees and Reverie Radio, and you can reach us at beesandreverieradio@gmail.com should you have a question. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week, and happy spring.